thought I'd just spend 40 minutes giving you a kind of general overview of my work over the last, since 30 Pieces of Silver, really. I thought I'd start there, seeing that's what's on display here. And that was made in the end of 88, 89, so 20 odd years ago. I'm just going to whip through, quite a few slides reasonably quickly, and then at the end, if you want to ask me questions, then I can elaborate more on particular pieces if you need it. Okay, so 30 Pieces of Silver. What you see here is the process for the work that's in the York St Mary's. And process has always been really important for me. The work is almost like a residue of the process. And I was, at the time that I made this piece, this is my first large-scale installation that was for a one-person show at the Icon Gallery in Birmingham, which was a big warehouse space. And so I knew I had to fill this big warehouse space. I decided to make one piece. I was given a small budget of £500 to buy materials, so I decided to spend it all on silver plate. So I bought as much silver plate second-hand from auctions or boot sales, or got people to donate things to me, their wedding presents, retirement presents, stuff they didn't want, christening presents. The reason I wanted silver plate was because it's like almost like monumental in people's lives, or silver is, that you have. Everybody has a little piece that they've got from somewhere, and it's usually kept in the cupboard because it tarnishes. And I'd worked before that using souvenirs of famous monuments in my work. I decided I wanted to use things that everybody knows, that we people, things that are part of the world that we understand, and using those to describe something that you can't understand. I got very inspired by watching Tom and Jerry films and things like, Modern Times by Charlie Chaplin, when things get destroyed accidentally. As I'm a very bad sculptor, I don't know anything much about sculptural techniques because I did painting for half my degree, so I kind of missed out all that bit. So and I'm very clumsy, so I kind of made a virtue out of me destroying things accidentally. I decided I'll just destroy them on purpose. And so, taking a cue also from the Customs and Excise, you see them steamrollering Rolex watches, fake Rolex watches. It's a visible way of getting rid of stuff. This particular steamroller driver who I hired was an extra in a carry-on film dressed up as Barbara Windsor. So he really loved doing this. He went over it 4 times, backward and forward. Only 10 tons, though. More recently, I've squashed things with 250-ton presses. That's very satisfying indeed. Anyway, so I'll... And there you go. So that's, after he'd run over it several times, just proof. And that's a resulting piece, which is in York St David's. And after that piece, which was made in 88, 89, I made several works. And this piece I made for another big warehouse space in London called Chisenhale Gallery, and I was public space. Had a new concrete floor put in, and as I was working on a series of cartoon deaths of things that met their end in some horribly orchestrated way, I wanted to blow something up in the gallery, and the curator said, "Oh, to have this new concrete floor laid." Anyway, the whole idea evolved into me, and they said, "What do you want to blow up?" And I said, "Well, I want to blow up a garden shed and all the things in a garden shed, basically because it's like a little house. It's almost like an attic. It's where all the stuff you don't want anymore, but you don't want to throw away. It's almost like, baggage, basically." And so I set up the garden shed in the gallery before I did anything with it, put a light bulb inside it. So it was like the light was on inside the shed before it got blown up. And then we asked the British Army to sponsor me, which they did, and blew up the garden shed. And then I took the fragments back to the same gallery and suspended them around the same light bulb. But this time, everything's organised, by the way. It's actually, do you mind if we draw the curtains a bit, just to get a little less light on the screen? If you can, that's better, much better. So the small objects, it's full of objects, things, toys, books, bikes, lawnmower, path of somebody's scooter, and all the debris was organised formally from small things, medium things, big things, and then the wood from the outside of the shed. So it's quite a formal arrangement. But then because of the light bulb, it sort of replicates the explosion. It almost gives the sound, except in visual terms. It's the army helping me to pick up the pieces. I very much like working with people who are not from the art world or not are outside my realm of knowledge. And it's, there's a lot of friction that goes on in the work. The friction of the work being destroyed or not being destroyed, and the interchange that you have trying to describe to the British Army why you want to blow up the shed. And there's some great conversations, and I love those kind of conversations. That's the view inside the shed. This is a piece. I worked with some archaeologists out in a dig in Cambridgeshire, and I was saying I wanted to do something about things falling off cliffs, and they said, well, between Dover and Folkestone, a lot of houses had gone over the cliffs. And he told me where there's a place where there was just the beach was almost made up of house bricks made into boulders like this one. So I collected enough to make this piece, which is called Neither From Nor Towards. And after doing an exploded shed, which is, the destruction happens in a split second. This happened over years. So the house fell off the cliff, got made into pebbles by the sea. And this is in Leipzig in East Germany in a gallery I showed there. And this piece is on at the Courtauld actually at the moment in London because it belongs to the Arts Council collection. They've loaned it to the Courtauld for a show. But I like the idea that this house had been made into pebbles by the sea. But it fell off the White Cliffs of Dover, this house, and landed in Germany in this particular piece. This is earth from underneath the Leaning Tower of Pisa. A piece I made in 2004, I think it was. I'm jumping around chronologically, by the way. I was going out as a Pisan architect. This is the only way I got this earth from underneath the Leaning Tower of Pisa. I went to see the engineers from the Leaning Tower. A lot of my work to do is gravity and about things being in limbo and about famous monuments. And so this idea of what's going to stop this monument from falling. Because I wanted to go up the Leaning Tower, but it was closed to the public for many years because they thought it was going to fall. And so in the end, although it was many years later until I got the soil, they said, well, we're going to take the earth out from underneath and subside the tower slightly, a few centimetres, just so it won't fall. And every few years they can do that. They can keep on subsiding it. So I said, can I have the earth? And they were going, oh. And anyway, finally I did manage to get about a tonne of the earth. So this is called Subconscious of a Monument. So this is all this humble earth that's laying underneath this famous monument, keeping it up for the last 1,000 years. So I gave it its moment in the sun, as it were, and it's levitating and fills a room to about waist height. There's a piece by Wasder Maria, American land artist, where he filled a room full of earth, but it's earth that's lying on the ground, and this is in the air. A church struck by lightning in Texas. I did a residency there, and I was looking for things struck by lightning, another of my cartoon deaths. And I heard that this church had been struck by lightning, so I drove down and met the minister and said, could I have some charcoal from your church to make a big charcoal drawing, suspended drawing? I think of my work as drawing mostly. And he said, oh yes, that's fine. And I said, well, what do you think about the church being struck by lightning? Because in insurance terms, that's called an act of God. And he said, oh well, that's God obviously meant us to have a much better church than this one. And this is a white congregation church, Baptist church in Texas. And when I was collecting the charcoal, these guys came up who were church builders, and retired architects, builders, plumbers. And I said, oh, and they said, we're measuring up to build another church. I thought, wow, this is very efficient. It's only just burnt down. He said, well, we rebuild churches that have been burnt down all the time, all over Texas. And I said, wow, do you have lightning strikes that often? And they said, no, actually, they're usually black congregation churches which get arsoned, which apparently happens all the time in the southern states of America still, which is quite alarming. And I thought, ooh, and this made this piece in 97 in Texas, and I called it Mass. And I thought, well, perhaps I should make a diptych for this piece, using a black church that's been arsoned. And it took me till 2005 when I finally did that. But this is a black church that's been arsoned in Kentucky, made of much bigger timbers because it's a Victorian church. And the minister from that church had a very different feel. He said he was very elderly. He said, I'm not going to rebuild my church. We were having church services in our houses because these Hell's Angels would ride up onto the porch of the church when they were giving services because they were trying to intimidate them out. So that was a very different story. And that was called Anti-Mass. And I showed them once together in this is in San Francisco, the Yerba Buena Arts Center. And both those pieces are in different museums, sadly in different museums. The God one is in, the Act of God one is in Phoenix, Arizona, and that one's in De Young in San Francisco.